speaker. We're jumping now from the northern Midlands of England to Italy with Alice Borchi. Have I pronounced that right?
It's Borchi, but it's good either way. Don't mind.
Good. Okay. From University of Warwick, and she's talking about Teatro Valle Occupato. Forgive my pronunciation. Protesting, occupying, and making art in contemporary Italy.
Thank you. And I became interested in Teatro Valle Occupato, which is a theater in the city center of Rome, which has been occupied by a group of theater professionals from 2011 to 2014, as I was looking at the idea of cultural value in Italy, and specifically how it has been affected by the economic crisis, and how cultural professionals resisted neoliberal and austerity policies. As I mentioned, Teatro Valle's occupation started in 2011, and just a quick look at how Italy looked back then. First of all, Italy was one of the countries that was mostly affected by the economic crisis, in particular because during that time, we had a very high public expenditure, but also very large cuts to the theaters and the cultural sector, and also very high public debt. And this economic crisis coincided with a time of political crisis. Berlusconi was leading his fourth mandate in Italy, and during this time, his consensus grew weaker and weaker due to a series of scandals that regarded him personally, due also to the results of a referendum in June 2011 that about the privatization of water. That was one of the key points of Berlusconi's government, but that failed miserably. That brought to the abrogation of the law that privatized water, and also to internal fights inside of Berlusconi's party, Popolo della Libertà, which eventually caused the resignation of Berlusconi in November 2011. He was replaced by a technocratic government led by the economist Mario Monti, who was supposed to put an end to the hardship of the Italian state that the Italian state was facing, and in order to cut the public expenditure, Monti's government implemented a series of very strict austerity policies. And also 2011 was an interesting year for activism globally because of how international movements such as Occupy protested against austerity cuts and also demanded for more democracy and social inclusion. And also there was a rise in the activism of cultural professionals. The most interesting example in Europe being the French intermittents, who were protesting for the cuts to the French unemployment subsidy for the artists and the short-term contracts. It also was a very lively year for Italian activists as well. We had protests from students, feminists, and also cultural professionals, as we are going to see. Well, Teatro Valle was occupied on the 14th of June, just a few days after the referendum of the privatization of water, and it was occupied by a group of theater professionals known as Company 3.0, which was famous for their advocacy for the dignity of cultural professionals. And they chose Teatro Valle because it was a very particular building in the city center of Rome, very close to the sites of power, such as the parliament. And also, it was a piece of the history of Italian theater. It was built in 1727, and it hosted many important playwrights and directors. However, due to the cuts to the public funding, it had been closed in May 2011. So the activists saw in Teatro Valle a symbol for the effects of austerity on the Italian cultural sector. And the original plan was that they were going just to occupy the building as a demonstration and leave it after a few days, but eventually they started to run the theater themselves, as they realized they had the skills and the know-how to do that. And moreover, the occupation gained some momentum over the time, attracting different kind of people. It attracted, of course, other theater professionals who wanted to join the occupation and work with this independent collective of theater professionals. And also we had students and artists who saw in the Teatro Valle a very interesting opportunity for research and also for professional development, because it also became a site for experimentation with theater education. It was very interesting for political activists as well, who saw this theater as a place for resistance against neoliberal and austerity policies. And it also became, as the Teatro Valle started to be managed as a commons, it also attracted law scholars and law experts and became the house of the debate on an Italian law on the commons, to make the commons legal in Italy, to be a recognized form of property other than private or public ownership. And of course, it was joined by a very large group of audience who went there to attend plays, and participants who took part to workshops and other activities. What do we mean when we say that the theater was managed as a commons? Well, first, it was a limit space. As the people who were inside the theater that decided to be called communards after the French Revolution, communard, they had to live there in order to continue to occupy the theater. And it also was a working space for all the people inside, and they also shared their everyday working practice. A person I have interviewed that was a theater practitioner there told me that there was this continuous stream of creativity, that the work fed onto the other. And also the Teatro Valle was not just a group of individuals, but it was a collective voice. Every decision was taken collectively and unanimously. There was no voting procedure. There was just a debate to reach consensus. And also it was a commons because it was open to the users to go there, stay there, just enjoy, have a cup of coffee, and spend some time just to see what was going on. And as Teatro Valle's success grew, the communards felt the need to overcome their illegal status and find public legitimization. And in order to, first of all, they decided they were going to bring together two different causes. Because of the cultural professionals who were looking for dignity and fair retribution in Italy, and the struggle for a law on the commons. And these were going to be the two main points of a legal association. And Teatro Valle decided to form a legal association, and in order to do so, they wrote a charter in several points stating their missions and their expected outcomes. And despite being legal on the national level, this charter has never been accepted by the local Rome bureaucracy. And so Teatro Valle never became a legal organization. despite their lack of legal status, the association had about 5,000 subscribers over the 3 years, and they managed to raise about 150,000 euros in funds. And Teatro Valle also won several awards, 5 awards for different reasons, for both their political and artistic activity, and had a very wide and rich program. There were plays, Teatro Valle specific productions, and seminar workshops. They had activities for school children, round tables, and they also attracted some famous names of the international and national artistic landscape. Just to name two of the most famous, Peter Brook and Dario Fo. However, when it comes to the interactions with the government, Teatro Valle had quite an ambiguous relationship with established power, because, first of all, Teatro Valle has never been threatened of being evacuated over the 3 years of the occupation. It only happened during the last part of the third year, and on top of that, the local council kept paying all the bills of Teatro Valle, electricity bills and water bills, which is a sort of contradiction, as it was occupied illegally. At the same time, it received some very harsh criticism from national and local politicians. For example, Matteo Renzi, who is now Prime Minister, openly attacked Teatro Valle as an unsustainable form of managing for a theatre. And moreover, the local council never accepted the formation of their association. Teatro Valle eventually decided to create a dialogue with the local council in order to find a legal legitimization for their work. Eventually, they agreed on leaving the building on August the 11th of 2014. But this decision was not reached unanimously, and so a part of the communards still protested outside the theatre against against the evacuation. What happened after the occupation is still to be written in a certain sense, because the agreement between Teatro Valle and the local council stated that that the local council was going to complete some mandatory restoration works in the theatre, and after the completion of the works, the communards could go back inside the theatre and take part to the management, jointly with another association, which is Teatro di Roma, which is a publicly funded association that manages 3 theatres in the city center of Rome. However, what happened in reality is that now in 2015, the restoration works have not started yet. And also the former communards have not found an agreement with Teatro di Roma, because they do not want to lose the freedom to manage the theatre, and also they don't want to lose their rights on their productions. And still, the communards keep on meeting and having public and private assemblies, but there are 2 groups inside of the communards that still can't find a final agreement on the constitution of an association. Mainly because a group of the communards didn't want to leave the theatre in the first place, and didn't want to have a dialogue with the governance, because they want to stay loyal to the countercultural nature of Teatro Valle, and do not want to have to become legal. But But still, another part of the communards is still trying to work out a charter that can be finally recognized by the local government. The problem now is that they don't have a physical location anymore, and this in Italian bureaucracy makes things much harder. However, they keep on having several activities. They are touring with a new play which is called Mocello di Giobbe, has been premiering in Bruxelles, and they still tour Italy with a series of playwriting and acting workshops called Rabbia and Crisi. Well, the experience of Teatro Valle is a very interesting one because first it was a successful example of how of how the official notion of cultural value can be challenged, and also of how a grassroots movement can start a new way of managing a cultural organization. But it also leaves many questions open. For example, what do we mean when we talk about the commons exactly? For Teatro Valle, it seems that it was a form of management, but also we have to think about the commons as a form of property, because the communards received a lot of criticism because they were not occupying a private building, but a public building, and some people felt that instead of giving back something to the community, they were taking it away from the local community. And moreover, another issue is that Teatro Valle can also be seen as an instrument of dissent. The idea of the commons that they are not a form of management, but they are actually a countercultural instrument and a form of protest more than anything. And connected to this issue is that do the commons need a legal framework or not? Does the quest for an Italian laws of the commons make sense? Or in becoming legal, will the commons lose their countercultural and alternative nature? Would it be a sort of alignment to neoliberal policies? And we also need to think about who is a communard. What level of engagement do you need to have with a commons in order to call yourself a communard? Because in Teatro Valle we could see several levels of engagement that went from actually living in the theater to just joining the theater, attending the plays inside of the theater. And this, when it comes to taking decisions, where the commons has just a one collective voice, it might cause some tensions. Another problem that Teatro Valle seemed to have was the difference in objectives of the activists who were taking part to the occupation, because part of them were theater professionals who were looking for an alternative way to manage a theater and also to do their job actually. But a part of the communards instead was more interested in the political part of the occupation. And eventually, as we can see now, this interaction and the tensions between these two movements have become a problem. And another issue is the long-term strategy, because of course Teatro Valle was occupied illegally, and this raises some issues in terms of how long can you actually keep occupying illegally a building? Is that a sustainable way to manage a theater? And eventually, the last and more provocative question is that, are the cultural commons a utopia? This question comes from a an Italian scholar of the commons, Ugo Mattei, who says that the most damaging things you can say about the commons is that they are just an utopia, because if you believe that the commons are a utopia, you'll never be actually able to make them real, to have a law about them. And this is probably one of the issues that is happening with the Italian governance, that they can still think that the commons are just an utopia. And this is probably why cultural commons faces so many struggles in order to find a legal dimension.